Greetings and welcome to I Care Leadership Live. This is the podcast for I Care leaders who want to level up their leadership, create better cultures, and improve the financial results in their clinics. My name is Mike Lyons, and in this episode, I'll be talking to my guest, Luke Goetting, who is an expert on Gen Z, how to retain them, how to manage them, and we're going to be talking about everything related to managing the younger part of our workforce. So let's jump in. Well, welcome, Luke, to the show. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you, Mike. Generic classic response. Very excited to be here, but it is legitimate and excited for our conversation.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I specifically, sought you out for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've been a follower of yours for a while. And secondly, there is, in the world of ophthalmology and eye care, there's definitely a lot of folks who are of different generations and a lot of younger generation folks in the workforce in ophthalmology. And there's also, as you can imagine, as I'm sure you've kind of seen in your work, a disparity between sometimes the management and the ownership of these practices and the age of the employees. Big surprise. I'm sure you've never heard that before, right?
Yeah, a classic dynamic. And one I would argue in some cases got exacerbated by the pandemic and a lot of the turnover of the last 5+ years, because we've seen a hollowing out of some of that middle layer. And so in many cases, you now have more of that owner and senior leadership, and then the more early on in their career folks, and sort of a missing bridge in between in some cases. So yeah, I think it's perhaps even more prescient, more relevant than even before.
Okay. Wow. I hadn't thought about that. So let's back up a little bit. I'd love to hear you talk about what is it that you do in your business, as Luke, or are you just kind of like, I'm Luke and I'm the man kind of a thing?
Well, that is true. I am the man. My experience has been sort of a fun one in that I started in outside sales early on in my career. I was traveling all over the Midwest, from exotic places like Omaha over to Pittsburgh. And the neat thing about that was I was essentially a manufacturer's rep. And so I was meeting with our local dealer network. We did electronic security, so like alarm systems, camera systems. It was a super great way to start my career because I wasn't sitting in one office. I was meeting in 3, 4, 5 every single week, traveling around the country. But after that, about 3, 4 years, I started my own communications agency because I had spent a lot of time creating content and learning the dynamics of meetings and wanted to help there. Especially, I'm very passionate about technology and ways we can incorporate dynamic resources to improve our meetings. At the time, we may remember that iPads were blowing up. Everyone thought they were going to revolutionize everything. Not sure it quite manifested that way. That eventually grew into a communications agency of 10 people. And then the pandemic hit, and we were doing a lot associated with events, and it kind of hit us really, really hard. And the silver lining there was I had been wanting to get back into strategy and communication, and specifically me speaking and running training workshops more regularly and creating content around communication and around successful dynamics in the workplace. And so for the last 2 to 3 years, as sort of my post-pandemic refocus, I have been speaking at events all around the world. I've been to 4 continents, spoken in dozens of US states around unlocking the potential of Gen Z, bridging generations, especially in the AI era. And so that's what I'm primarily doing now, including, and I'm thinking we can put a link in, a brand new book about unlocking next gen talent. So it's very much a compilation of my career experiences, especially running an agency, and very much empathize with the challenges of leadership and owners who want to focus on that bottom line, just make things run day to day. And then also you're dealing with people and all the exciting and challenging situations that arise from that.
Okay, awesome. Well, definitely a passionate advocate for the workplace. I actually have I'm going to surprise you here. I have a picture of you on the job here.
Oh,
For those of you that are,
hot off the presses, by the way, Mike. Well done.
I know. So yeah. So for those of you listening on audio, I just pulled up a picture of Luke in a pink suit with a pink tie, looking very dapper. And you're doing your thing. You're speaking on stage.
Yes, it's funny you bring that up because that is the very first time I've worn that. It was sort of this is a funny anecdote, but like I like to get a little dressed up for New Year's, something kind of silly. And so I had this pink, literally I got that blazer, that jacket coat because I was buying another one for my speaking last year and it was on clearance for like $30 and it fit me. So like, I'll just grab that pink one too. It'll come in handy when we go to Las Vegas or something.
Nice.
And I wore it for New Year's Eve and I got so many compliments. I'm not usually the one getting dapper outfit compliments. And so I put on LinkedIn, I was like, hey, do y'all think I should wear this for speaking? And overwhelmingly everyone said, yeah, let's do it. So this is, as of now, my speaker outfit for 2026.
Oh my gosh.
One of the first events that I started debuting it.
Wow, amazing. Well, yeah, I think you should definitely keep rolling with that. And yeah, obviously, you've finally honed your craft there. But on the topic here of generations, I think that's what's on a lot of people's minds that I've heard from in the management of in ophthalmology practices, and it's all about staff retention. It kind of starts with staff retention, and to my mind, that there's more to it than that, but that's a lot where a lot of people's minds go. So I kind of want to get into that, but maybe let's start kind of at the beginning here. And I'm going to just be real honest here. For a long time, I just thought the generational difference thing is bunk. That's not real. That's just a whole bunch of malarkey. But I'm starting to change my mind. But can you convince me I'm wrong, Luke? Convince me I'm wrong.
Well, the interesting thing, Mike, is that I think you're both right and wrong, which is
Wow.
a safe answer. No, there are so many shared principles. There are so many shared best practices that apply equally across all generations. And in fact, when I talk about unlocking the potential of Gen Z in some of my keynotes and trainings, that's one of the top comments I get is like, hey, this sounds kind of, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm a baby boomer. Like, this sounds kind of great to me too. And so in many cases, it's absolutely correct. I think what really matters when it comes to generational conversations is that there is an entirely different context that each generation grows up with. Economically, the ones that really stick out to me, economically and technologically, those are very different. And what, in my mind, is so different, arguably a more accelerated change between, let's say, millennials are kind of the hybrid digital native generation, but certainly Gen X and baby boomers, is this concept of being a digital native generation. I'm using air quotes for the audio folks, where the second half of millennials, and by the way, I can do some quick definitions. Millennials born, the starting point escapes me, but like born from 1980 to about 1997.
Okay.
And then Gen Z born about between 1997 to 2012. So millennials now are pretty firmly like about 30 to 45. Gen Z is pretty much in their teens up to age 30. And so digital natives, especially Gen Z, they grew up in an era where they always had access to the internet. And that has changed a lot of implications. Very different way to grow up. But a few things I'll highlight from the beginning is this idea of corporate transparency. This is a generation that has never been in a situation where they couldn't simply Google something, or later on, look something up on TikTok and find an answer within seconds, within moments. And as you know, Mike, like a lot of corporate environments are not set up to function anything like that. It's very much need to know. It's very much the corner office, and people are just given tasks without really understanding that context. And that's very difficult to get buy-in around. So that's one thing. And the other thing is just speed. So again, principles might apply the same, but I'm reminded I have a Gen Z at Work podcast. I was interviewing my cousin, and I was just blown away. I'm a millennial, but I feel like in some ways, raised by baby boomer parents, like that mentality of just get into this new job, plug away for like 3 years and maybe 5 years, and like kind of come up for air, kind of see if you're being considered for promotion. That's pretty common knowledge or common best practice. My cousin, on the other hand, he shocked me by saying like he was basically evaluating his options in terms of he had a permanent role, and he was saying, okay, I can stay here. I'll learn like 10 to 20 to 30% more over the course of the next 6 months. I could go to a new organization. I'd probably learn 50 to 60% more over the next year or two. Or I could start my own job, probably start my own entrepreneurial ventures, probably learn 80 to 90% new elements. But not only was he thinking about that constantly, he was evaluating that at pretty much at a quarterly or 6-month interval, reevaluating it. And to me, that's a big thing that we saw during this so-called Great Resignation period in 2020, 2021, 2022, where I think organizations just didn't appreciate that digital natives, especially if they're not seeing something new that they're growing over the course of 1 or 2 years. It's super easy. It's easier than ever before to go find a new role, whether it's a full-time permanent role, whether it's something in the gig economy, whether it's some sort of hybrid solution. Like, we are in a global marketplace in a way that we never were, and that millennials, Gen X, baby boomers did not grow up with in that same vision and context.
Yeah. And I think that that idea that employees are constantly kind of evaluating, their situation, and, that can be, my mind goes a couple different places. It can be viewed as sort of as self-serving and by older folks, and I'm just going to claim I'm a Gen Xer here. But that creates frustration, right? And it creates like resentment, and that's not productive at all, right? And so I don't know, what are we to do here? What are we to do here with this idea of like, hey, the clock's ticking, what am I learning here?
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, great question. Hopefully, I think that can be the foundation of our real key takeaways here.
Yeah.
I really quickly want to add the caveat, because you're absolutely right. The pushback, kids just don't want to work these days. It was pretty aggressive. It's honestly a major reason why I thought I should start talking more about Gen Z in the workplace, because I felt like the narrative was becoming extremely unproductive. One of the stats I shared was, if we look at these professional roles as a means to economic opportunity, people during the Great Resignation who were switching jobs on average received a 17% pay increase every single time they moved during that time period. It has definitely come down since then.
Right.
But if you're making the case that they're making savvy economic decisions, that the data was very, very clearly in favor of people doing that. And so again, that's sometimes the point I want to make is it's no longer this world where we're lucky to have a job. In many cases, we're lucky to retain and keep talented people on our teams and on our staff. I know that's kind of the lead into this question. So a few things that I really want to key in. First of all, Gen Z, perhaps even ever more than any other generation before, like very much focused on purpose, very much focused on the buy-in, the how this is aligned with their overall identity. I think this has really been a trend, I think, from the baby boomers to present day, where people are looking at that paradigm of like, oh, I've got my work persona and I've got my life persona, and the two shall never mix. I think we've continued to see those barriers kind of break and be merged more together. And I think Gen Z more so than ever before. So really focusing on what are the key things that we're doing, the impacts, helping people see, helping people live better, higher quality lives. So many organizations fall in, I'm not going to call it trap, but like we put this great emphasis on our purpose and our vision and our values. We'll have like these leadership kickoff meetings in January or February or March. And that's when we lean on that. And then as the year goes on and people are just getting caught up in the day-to-day and the grind and the overworked and overwhelmed, it's easy to lose sight of those things. So one, just keeping that top of mind. Two, I would say really helping to map out opportunities for people. I just, in my example of my cousin Nate mentioned, he was constantly evaluating like what's the opportunity of me staying here and what's the opportunity cost of me staying here. And I appreciate with some of these clinics, like it's similar to the agency I was running. We're smaller businesses. There's not this huge 7-layer corporate ladder to go from. But that's something we have to be strategic about, because again, if someone feels like they've been there at a year, 2 years, like they might not feel compelled to stay there if they don't feel like they're learning. So I think we got to get creative. Some things I like to encourage is one, doing personalized career coaching. So it's taking the time, whether it's our HR leaders, whether it's our ownership, whether it's other managers, helping people realize what opportunities exist to them. So often people leave and I hear from leadership and they say, oh, that person, they had so much more to learn, so many more opportunities. And of course, my first question is, did you tell them? Did you map that out for them? So that's critically important. But also other cool things I've seen, this is sort of a tech world example, but it can be applied elsewhere. Google famously had this idea of 20% time, where they allowed people roughly 1 day of the week to work on their job rather than just in their job. And I think that allows for so much creativity. That was something I really valued in that sales job, because I was traveling constantly and I would carve out most Fridays to refine my deck, to strategize my meetings, to make different follow-up emails. Those were things that were really impactful and really important to my job, but I wasn't able to just do in the day-to-day. And then finally, this is one I think could be especially valuable to small businesses and all organizations. This idea of almost envisioning like an internal gig marketplace, like a gig economy idea, where instead of thinking of, okay, you've got your box of this is your job, 9 to 5, you do the exact same thing day in, day out. What about envisioning something where we'll just keep on the 20% for now, where roughly 1 day of the week, I can work on another project that is of my interests. Maybe it's helping with the lowest hanging fruit on digital native Gen Z conversations. Like maybe it's help with the company's social media. A little bit of a stereotype, but they tend to be more savvy in digital environments. Maybe it's helping manage our Google reviews or helping facilitate Google reviews. Maybe it's doing some mapping of our customer or client experience and looking at that. There's all kinds of different things. And if we're strategic as leaders, we can start to create an index. And rather than things that could be valuable to our organization that are outside of that core day-to-day, rather than hire only externally or just never do anything about it, start to circle that around the org. And you might find out that someone is actually really interested in video editing that you had no idea about and you never would have asked because they're otherwise working at the help desk. So long-winded, I'll shut up here, but those are my some quick hitting ideas for you on that front, Mike.
This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help eye care businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. Yeah, I've seen a number of ophthalmology practices and other healthcare practices definitely tap into the social media thing, finding someone on the staff that can manage that page and really do creative things with the TikTok lives and Instagram reels. That's a wonderful idea that people can do. And I think in the world of ophthalmology and eye care, there are so many skills and things you can learn in a clinic, right? So, I don't know if you've been to an ophthalmologist before, Luke, but there's a lot of different cameras and tests and processes and things to do and learn. It can be very technical. Um, and it could take many years to really master all that. And then you can teach other people how to do that, right? And so there are many, many growth paths for people within the world of ophthalmology if we just take the time to, and I liked what you said, personalize it, right? It's not a one size fits all, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Identifying them, making them available, helping people personalize. And I'll add one other thought, again, more tailored toward digital natives, gamifying it, gamifying that experience a little bit. We know that Gen Z grew up in an extremely digital environment. Pretty much their entire youth, they were doing tests digitally, and where you have levels, you have badges, you have points, all the gamified elements. Anyone who's played a cell phone game knows that it's not just solitaire. No. Bonuses, and there's levels, and there's characters, and there's power-ups, like anything they can do to help create that gamification, that stimulation, and that continuation. And so looking at how can we do that? How can we build in mini credentials for people to see that, no, it's not just about going from a junior to a senior. There's so many more pathways along this. And again, I think HR and I think leadership can really help create and champion these types of initiatives internally. If someone can point to, and by the way, leaning in on our professional organizations too, and pointing people to potential certifications and courses, et cetera, that they can help show that, no, this was not just 2 years working at this clinic. This was me achieving 5 things, receiving 2 or 3 new credentials. That in many cases, the studies are showing that Gen Z cares more about that skills development than they really envision themselves becoming a manager or the VP, department head, whatever. They really value those skills. So we got to, again, get creative and intentional about allowing people to see that they are making that progress.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, my mind is going a lot of different places here, such as like softwares that can help us track and say, hey, Sally got this, credential or this like a badge, for lack of a better, to put it in a gamified term.
Well, and keying in on balancing what we just shared, like that idea of transparency, I think of sort of a character portal, right? And so what we could do is collaboratively identify, let's just say, to keep it simple, 3 skills that we want to build for this role. Well, let's just create a simple, it can literally be, and there's some really advanced HR tools that can help do this in a much more robust level, but it can be as simple as a PowerPoint slide. And these are the 3 skills. And like right now, as your manager, I see you as like a 3 out of 5 on this, a 4 out of 5 on this, a 2.5 out of 5 on this. Like, here are 3 things I'd like to work with you on over the next 6 months. Let's get you to 4 or 5 on all 3 of these. And that's going to motivate someone. That's going to help someone see they're making progress. And it's going to hopefully, if we're doing it right, create more buy-in to the role and to the skills that they're both trying to prioritize.
Okay. Love it. Love it. One other thing I wanted to talk about and ask about has to do with, and I think you may have touched on this a little bit, is the desire to be involved, the desire to have a say and to have input. I got, my stepdaughter is Gen Z, and we had a very long conversation the other day because I was thinking about this conversation, and I was like, what's on your mind? Because she's starting a new job right now. And she talked about a lot of this stuff. And one of the things she brought up was, wanting to have input and be valued for your own ideas. And I wanted to pull up again here another little image that I found here from your LinkedIn. And for those that can't see, can you describe what I put here up on the screen? What does it mean? And what is the significance of it as it relates to Gen Z?
Absolutely. Again, applaud you on the show prep, Mike. Yeah, very nice. So the graphic itself, we're talking about the 2/3 rule. To me, it's really integral to leadership in that it is very easy. And I've got a few anecdotal stories I can share on this, but to just outline the graphic itself, it's very easy for us to just say, I'm the leader, I'm the manager, I'm the boss. Here is the vision. I am delivering it to you 100% formed by me. And I expect you to follow and to buy into it. Sort of the classic command and control experience. Early on in my career, I was going to a sales kickoff meeting. We were going to gather all the reps from around the country and we were going to get it all together. I was so excited that I was enthusiastic about flying to Minnesota in January when it was about 9 degrees. But I was so excited to meet with my colleagues because a lot of times the role we were in was relatively isolating. We were traveling by ourselves. I was so excited to get together, talk strategy for the upcoming year. Instead, I listened to basically 2 days of this is the vision that we've already established from our leadership team. There were no opportunities really to even ask questions, let alone weigh in on the vision. And unfortunately, the vision itself was not something that most of the sales reps were excited about or aligned with. We were experiencing a disconnect from what we had seen, sort of so-called on the ground. And nothing can kill buy-in quicker. And in fact, that ultimately led to me leaving that organization, going from very enthusiastic to very disappointed in a matter of a few days. So ultimately, it's so critical. And again, Gen Z having always had this access to information, having always had access to transparent communication. If we're not getting that buy-in, if we're not inviting people to contribute at least a third, I use the 2/3 rule because we do as leaders, we do as men, we have more access to information, oftentimes much more experience. I do think we should set out a framework. But at the same time, I do think it's critical, not only from getting those sort of boots on the ground, oftentimes much more client-facing, customer-facing interactions, get those people to weigh in and help shape out that other third. But again, just if we want to actually have any of our vision implemented, we need the people to be bought in. And when you give opportunities for them to both run with what you've outlined and add to it and supplement it and even share their own insights, it's going to be a higher quality product. And most importantly, it's going to have more buy-in. All right. That was long-winded. Yeah, that's my vision for that 2/3 rule. And obviously the ratio can change, but I think it's critical to have a reasonable percentage marked out for your team to contribute to.
Yeah, I think in ophthalmology and in healthcare generally, this is something that's never done, really, rarely done. It's probably not even just a healthcare thing, but oftentimes you have these physicians, they own their practice, maybe they founded the practice themselves, and their thought is, hey, I'm the genius on the ivory tower, and we're here to serve patients, and that's all you need to know. And meanwhile, these doctors now are dealing with a lot of struggles. They're dealing with revenue pressure and price pressure, and they're not tapping into the knowledge and the ideas of the team that they have. And I think there's a missed opportunity there.
Absolutely. And at a very minimum, I think there's much more value than this, but at very minimum, you would expect people from different generations to know how to best connect with those different generations. In my book, I talk about a success story where the team proposed, hey, can we add text messaging communication to our client interactions? Because right now you're facilitating people either through these online forms or through email, and we don't like either. He doesn't like either of those forms. Text messaging, honestly, is kind of the baseline of digital messaging opportunities there. And that led to 17, I forget the exact stat, but something like a 20% increase in client satisfaction as they added that metric over the course of the following year. So at the minimum, understanding what their own generation, and I think it's really important to note, Mike, that if you combine millennials and Gen Z, right now, today in 2026, they make up over 60% of the overall workplace and our overall potential patient base.
Wow.
And that number is only going to increase, of course. And so, yes, this is a big percentage of our both our staff and our clients that we need to have a better understanding of. And again, to belabor the point, who better to help us create those insights?
Awesome. Well, we could go on and on. Luke, you've shared some awesome information. I think this is something that the people in the eye care community are definitely wanting. And so, being that as it may, you said you talked about a book that you have. Is it out? Is it coming out? Where can people get that? And what is it called?
It is coming out, and it should be available. Unless we publish this in the next few minutes, it should be available to everyone as soon as they're hearing this thing. So yeah,
Wow.
Unlocking Next Gen Talent, How to Connect, Engage, and Future-Proof Your Workforce in the Age of Digital Natives and AI. So trying to cover a lot. It's an ambitious book. I'm super excited with how it came out. You can also find me at Luke Goetting, GOETTING.com. We'll throw that link, I'm sure, in the show notes.
I will.
So that's my speaker site. I do keynotes. I do workshops, all valued and all prioritized on helping organizations get along with one another so that we can help achieve our missions and our goals of what we're trying to accomplish. And real quickly, I just have to share one of my favorite things to help facilitate intergenerational collaboration at organizations is these so-called brain dates, where we essentially set up like mini lunch tables, kind of like 5 to 7 people. I like to actually have my audiences generate the ideas, as in like your team, like what are the things you want to talk about? I'll set up numbers on different tables, and we'll bring people together regardless of rank or hierarchy at the organization to discuss and share their ideas on it. You can do 15-minute rotations. So over the course of an hour, you go to 4 different tables. You can do more lengthy if you want to do a deeper dive. A super cool way to get a lot of insights, also supplemental networking, all in an effort to kind of skip that classic coffee or beer lunch date where you just have the senior employee on and on and on with their stories from the good old days. Not that they're not super valuable, but it's not always the most engaging way to share those types of insights.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no doubt. I would love to attend one of your engagements. Hopefully I get the opportunity to do that. And I feel like I got a mini personal, coaching session from you right here. So there's perks to being a podcast host.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity to connect with everyone. Really appreciate it, Mike.
Well, that brings this episode of Eye Care Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better eye care clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for eye care leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.